Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm joined by some great representatives here from Staten Island. They'll all come up separately, as well as the president of the ATU Bus Drivers Union here, Daniel Cassella, and some concerned citizens over something that, far too often happens is the Staten Island commuter, those who take the local or express buses who have to work, so all they want to do is go to work very often. They suffer dramatically, they suffer disproportionately, and things have gotten worse. This isn't just a normal, everyday complaint. Things have gotten worse for the hardworking Staten Island bus commuter, and frankly, things will get even more worse unless something is fixed and something is addressed and something is done quickly. For those who don't know, Staten Island has 4 bus depots. Right behind me here is the Yukon. We have one in Charleston, one in Castleton, and one in Meredith. There was a big push for congestion pricing, getting people to get on buses and out of their cars. But a few months ago, before a final decision was made, the decision was made to close one of the bus depots. The most efficient, well-run is on Meredith Avenue, and the MTA, I think in a really not in a smart way, decided not to renew the lease, and they plan to close it down. What does that mean? That means that the 3 other bus depots that are already crowded, they already have buses idling on the streets here, bothering and disturbing people who just want to live freely, but you have buses idling. It's only going to get worse because those buses and the bus operators have to go to these other bus depots. So that's a mistake, and that we hope that they revisit and change their mind, because that will cause disruption in people's lives, absolutely and guaranteed. Now, more recently here, what's happened, when I say it's getting worse, is that if you add up all the buses and all those other bus depots, pretty much with the exception of Meredith, the other three major ones, almost half the buses don't go out. On a daily basis, almost half the buses, because of mechanical issues, because they can't operate. Even if they do go out, some of them don't have air conditioners. And anybody who experienced that ride during the summer when it was 85, 90 degrees, those poor passengers sitting on a bus, not to mention the bus operator, without air conditioner, was just wrong. So could you imagine if half the subway system in the MTA system was out almost every day? There'd be riots in the streets. But yet the Staten Island bus commuter has to suffer every day, right? And what's the consequence? Buses don't go out. That means people are waiting on a corner longer than they should. The lines, sometimes the buses are so full that they can't pick up passengers, so it causes anxiety, disruption between the passengers and the bus operators. And let's look at the public response from the MTA. Just behind us, from my right over there, that's what they said. Almost every bus on Staten Island on a daily basis. We're not orchestrating this. This was just recently. Almost every bus you could expect delays. And what do they say? We say we're waiting because of bus operators. That is wrong. Those people, pictures of those guys, are actually waiting for a bus. They're waiting for a bus because there is no bus. Behind us, that's the picture, once again. That was just last week. The S93 was canceled, and meanwhile you have all these bus operators waiting. That's the line, actual people waiting, standing. They're obedient, trying to do the right thing. They're waiting indefinitely. They don't have no clue. And another one behind Nicole here. There's another indication right here behind me. All those S's, 40, 42, 44, all those indicate that those buses are delayed. And the people waiting, those guys are not just hanging out. They're waiting for a bus. The bus that doesn't work. That's the picture. The last one over there is Meredith. What does that indicate? That means that all the buses are out and nobody's waiting. That's the way it should be. So that's the way it should be, and this is the way it is every day. And now with school open, it's only going to get worse. So this is really a call to arms to the MTA to listen to the people of Staten Island, listen to the commuters who suffer disproportionately, and help us out. Listen, if I was a mechanic, I'd do it myself. Let's get these buses fixed. Let's get them on the road. We're not even talking the quality of life that these residents have to endure every day. And if you see 10 or 15 buses idling here every day, guess what? There's going to be 20 or 25. So if it's a problem now, it's going to get worse. We're all in this together. We're hopeful that they hear us. We're hopeful that they listen to us. Let's fix this problem before it gets worse. as I mentioned before, with some great elected officials, one of whom is our Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis.
Thank you, Vito. Look, this is a classic case of asking us for more money and then cutting services back. This is what the MTA does. They are constantly looking to take more and more money from the hard-working citizens, the commuters, and yet they don't do what is right with the money when they receive it. There's no reason for this bus depot to close, creating more congestion. The other depots, the 3 depots that they want to move the buses to, are at capacity. And as Vito said, it will disrupt the quality of life around the other 3 depots because you would have more buses idling on the sidewalk or parking in front of homes and businesses. And that is not what Staten Island wants. It is not what we deserve. So we continue to fight the MTA. As you know, we battle often with the MTA. You know, this is a situation where we are many times a forgotten borough. When it comes to closing our bus depot, all of a sudden they remember where Staten Island is. And that's not the way it should work. We disproportionately pay a lot into this system, okay? All the revenue that comes from the Verrazano Bridge doesn't go back into the Verrazano Bridge. It goes to fund other parts of the system. So why are we seeing services and infrastructure being cut from Staten Island? Not to mention, they received billions of dollars in federal funding. All right, they have access to infrastructure funding that they can obtain if the state matches it through the MTA. So there are plenty opportunities to resolve this issue if it is about cost. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to mismanagement. There's no reason, with the resources that it has, that the MTA should be cutting services and closing infrastructure in our community. And that is why we're here together to stand against this. And we ask for the MTA to change its decision and allow the Meredith Depot to open, because these other 3 depots are at capacity and it is desperately needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Thank you. Well put. And to make matters even worse, we're getting to be like a third world country. A lot of the buses in this depot actually have roaches. So they're infested with roaches. So just think about that. The operator comes in and he finds 50 roaches, not to mention the passengers who have to deal with it every day. So let's just wake up, please. Republican leader and council member Joe Borelli.
Thank you. Thank you, Borough President, for not trying to fix any of the buses, even if you weren't a mechanic. Let's start with that. I want to be clear about one thing. This was a plan that was in place before the collapse of congestion pricing. This was something that was part of the MTA's future proposals after they assumed they would have the revenue from congestion pricing. So this is a tale of 2 cities. Congestion pricing would have happened one part of the city, their super duper special district called Manhattan. They would have got more service, less congestion in theory, better service, more frequent service, and Staten Islanders would have got screwed. When it comes to money, the 2nd Avenue subway, Jano Lieber farts $1 billion and another chunk of change goes to the 2nd Avenue subway. When it comes to Staten Island, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now that sounds a lot to you and me, but hundreds of thousands of dollars versus billions of dollars is a big difference for the MTA. But it was just hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep this bus depot open and operating. And yet the MTA said, screw you. The MTA is a horribly mismanaged entity. The public does not hate the MTA management enough. And if I was the governor of this state, which I'm not, but hopefully someone else is someday, the board of the MTA should be dismissed, and competent people who want to try to find a better way to serve the people of all 5 boroughs, not just the Manhattan one that gets all the attention, but a board that wants to serve the members of all 5 boroughs and the greater part of the MTA region. Those are the people we need. We don't need people like Jano Lieber who want to sit here and punish Staten Island and then blame us because we didn't support his dopey congestion pricing plan. Thank you.
To put the numbers in perspective, according to the MTA's own numbers, so you have to take that with a grain of salt, the fare evasion is about $2 million a day. $2 million a day. So in 3 days of enforcing fare evasion, that $6 million will address all of our needs, I believe, on Staten Island. Let's call it a week and be conservative. A good fighter and a colleague who really stands up for the people of Staten Island, Councilman David Carr. David?
Thank you so much, Borough President, for organizing us all together here today, and thank you to the folks at ATU who are always great partners in advocating for more transit options for our Staten Island communities. You know, my colleagues have said it all. This is just a wrong decision. It's the wrong decision, and especially at the wrong time. And this has nothing to do with the loss of congestion pricing for the MTA's bottom line. They were always planning to do this. And moreover, don't let them fool you with the notion that, oh, it could have helped, because that was capital dollars they were trying to raise, not operating dollars that it takes to operate and lease the Meredith Avenue bus depot just a few miles from here in my district. And the Congresswoman mentioned it. Without the Meredith Avenue bus depot, the capacity to service the existing Staten Island bus system will be at its peak. They will not be able to accommodate additional buses at a time when they're encouraging us to take mass transit, at a time when they are proposing perhaps a modified congestion pricing proposal for after the November elections, because, you know, it takes a lot of courage to bring back controversial proposals after an election has happened. They're encouraging us to take mass transit. At the same time, they'll be de facto capping our ability to add new bus lines and new bus services, because we'll be one depot short of where we were a few months ago. So the reality is that it doesn't make sense from a planning perspective from the MTA, and it also doesn't make sense from a planning perspective from the city. At this time, the administration at City Hall is pushing more density across the city, including Staten Island, in the so-called City of Yes proposals. A series of proposals my colleagues and I have grave misgivings about, grave reservations about. So at the same time that they're trying to plan for more people to live on Staten Island and fewer people using cars by banning off-site parking requirements for new developments, they're also going to be adding this de facto cap to our ability to serve those very people with new bus service. So it doesn't make sense from any way you cut it, trying to serve the community we have now or the grandiose visions that others have for our future. We need to maintain the Meredith Avenue bus depot so that we can adequately serve the bus system we have and potentially grow for our needs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Two other points I just want to make that, as I mentioned at the outset, these bus depots are at capacity. We're not even calculating the electrification of some of these buses that take up more space, that will push more buses out on the street. And I said third world country before. It's not unusual that one of the guys comes out to get on a bus and there's a homeless guy sleeping on the bus. Why? Because they can get access to the bus and they call it their home. And that's an issue that just makes it even worse and worse. So next up is our State Assemblyman, Michael Tanusis. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President, for hosting this press conference. I speak to you today not just as the Assemblyman representing the East Shore of Staten Island, but also as a commuter. I occasionally take the express bus from Staten Island to go into downtown Manhattan, and I also take the subway. So I see firsthand how hard our bus operators work. And I see firsthand the conditions they have to put up with these buses. I also stand in line many times with many of my fellow constituents as we wait to take the bus for whatever reason, whether it be in Manhattan or be in Staten Island. You know, I prosecuted criminals for 10 years. When I prosecuted those criminals, a lot of them were members of organized crime. I will stand here today and I will tell you that the MTA is New York City's 6th crime family. And the worst part about that is that they do it legally. They do it with your tax dollars. And that's the worst part. A few months ago, I was in downtown Manhattan and I was taking the train to go to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. And as I'm going down the steps in the subway, somebody I saw holding the door open. 6 people walked through without paying the toll, without paying the fare to go into the subway system. It is not a coincidence that the MTA loses over $700 million a year to toll and fare evasions. But yet, they were willing to implement congestion pricing to raise $1 billion. Now they're closing this bus depot. And as you heard from my colleagues, this had nothing to do with congestion pricing. So when one of your reporters later today asks the MTA chairman about the closure of this depot, don't let him answer you that it's a result of us flopping on congestion pricing, because it has nothing to do with it. The MTA is mismanaged. They need to be audited. And they need to be audited not by another governmental entity. They need to be audited by a top accounting firm. That's the bill that myself and Assemblyman Riley put in this past year. And we're going to follow through as much as we can. We will continue the fight. God bless you all.
Thank you, Michael. Speaking of Mike Riley, Assemblyman Michael Riley.
Thank you, Borough President. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to our MTA employees, the backbone of New York City, getting us around. Thank you to our commuters who stand here with us. You know, when I think about the bus service on Staten Island, all I can think about is that I probably can make it to Albany faster than I can make it to Manhattan sometimes. And that is just something that's unacceptable. You know, we've been crying and raising these issues about our longest commute from the South Shore of Staten Island to Manhattan for decades. And it's only going to get worse thanks to this insane plan to close Meredith. You know, I've been fortunate enough to be appointed to the MTA Inspector General Advisory Board by Minority Leader Will Barkley. And I take that role very serious because I am the eyes, ears, and voice for our Staten Island commuters on that board. And I'm going to raise the issue that we need to ask the MTA IG and his staff to look into how this is going to impact service for Staten Islanders. Let the IG tell the MTA this is a horrible idea. You're going to hurt New Yorkers, which Staten Islanders are. Remember that. Remember that. The governor, the mayor, the MTA board, Staten Islanders are New Yorkers. And we're sick and tired of being that redheaded stepchild. We're not going to stand for it anymore. We will stand together like we are today, pushing back, making sure that we keep Meredith open because it's the right thing to do for our Staten Island commuters. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I'm married to a redhead, so be careful. You know, part of this, unfortunately, it's not just totally on the up and up. You got to sort of, your cynical ears go up, your antenna, I should say. If you recall, after we fought back against congestion pricing because the MTA's own study said traffic would get worse in Staten Island, everybody knows we already pay 2 tolls, you'd have to pay a third, and air pollution would get worse in Staten Island. So the reasons we fought it were just common sense. And then thereafter, when it was hopefully killed forever, but we'll wait and see, a board member on the MTA actually said, hey, is there a way we can punish Staten Island? We had not received cars for the Staten Island Rapid Transit in 50 years. A new shipment comes in, and this guy said what a lot of them, I think, are thinking inside. He said it out loud, hey, is there a way we can screw them? So that's why we're sort of here, A, trying to be substantive, but B, let's just hope and pray they're not being cynical by design. Paul, you want to say something? Paul, representing Senator Jessica Scarcella Spanton, as Paul Member's Chief. Paul.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Matricano. I'm here representing New York State Senator Jessica Scarcella Spanton. It has come to our office's attention that MTA buses running through Staten Island have not lived up to the quality standards. Many of our constituents felt that these buses have been dirty and not cleaned properly, causing a travel inconvenience for our constituents. Buses have often been delayed, causing our constituents to wait longer than expected. This isn't an indication of the hardworking people at this depot and all the depots on Staten Island. This is a systematic problem within the MTA as a whole. They continue to receive money from the state and make no improvements. We ask the MTA to take our concerns into consideration to improve the quality of life for our fellow Staten Islanders. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Senator. James, you want to say something? On behalf of the District Attorney Mike McMahon, James Clinton.
You
Good afternoon, folks. James Clinton, Press Secretary for District Attorney Mike McMahon. I want to thank Borough President Fossella and ATU President Daniel Cassella for bringing us here today. You heard it from our elected officials. Nearly half of Staten Island's buses are now out of service. The Meredith Bus Depot is set to be closed. Bus operator overtime and maintenance work has been cut, and now buses aren't being repaired as a result. Now, this decision by the MTA is going to have real consequences. You think about a bus coming every 15 minutes, now it may come every 45 minutes, every hour. That could be the difference between a Staten Islander keeping their job or losing it. That could be a difference between making it to your important doctor's appointment on time, or how about this, just spending more valuable time with your family or loved ones. And I want to be clear about this, right? These lapses in service are not the fault of the bus drivers. They're the fault of the MTA not supplying them with the requisite amount of funds for the maintenance work. We don't have buses for the bus drivers to drive. And I think perhaps what's most concerning about all of this is that it seems to be a common trend, representative of a broader issue we see in the city, which is that time and time again, whether it be our teachers, our police officers, or yes, our bus operators, the hardworking men and women of the city are being asked to do more with less, right? So now, how are we supposed to respond? So the DA's office is joining our elected officials, call on the MTA to reverse this disastrous decision before even more Staten Islanders are hurt as a result. Thank you.
District Attorney, every leader, every organization has a leader, a voice, and represents his group well, and that person is here today. He's president of the ATU 726 Local, Daniel Cassella. Danny?
I first want to thank Vito for listening to me about these issues, serious issues, and all the electeds that are here today, taking time out of their day. They could be doing a lot of the stuff instead of wasting time with the MTA, where they cut all the overtime for bus operators, all the overtime for mechanics. And what does that mean? The buses that are behind us are just sitting there. We don't have enough manpower to get to those buses. So the problem is not going to just go away just because we're doing a press conference. You're not going to have service tomorrow. It's not going to happen. You need to get overtime put back for the operators so the public can get a bus instead of waiting, like James just said, a half hour, 45 minutes. We have a lot worse stories. We have 2 hours, 2.5 hours wait time at the ferry, which is ridiculous. We have thousands of buses that leave the ferry a day. But because there's no buses to go there, the people are waiting ridiculous time. And what happens is, then the bus operator is in jeopardy, because as soon as that bus pulls up an hour later, they think it's the bus operator's fault. Just like the signs, read over there. There's delays because of the amount of bus operators we have. We're short bus operators. Well, I don't think 50 bus operators sitting around is short. It's short because there's no buses to be taken out. And it's got to stop. The budget is the budget, I get it. But does that mean people will never get home? Or the kids won't get to school? We probably had 25 or 30 trips this morning just out of here that didn't go out because there's no bus. Those are school kids waiting to get to school. Or 1 o'clock, 1:30 starts the school break in the afternoon, the guys will be sitting around again with no bus. So it's not right what they're doing. The maintenance department is willing to work. They're working on buses that even have the roaches, which is disgusting, but they're willing to do it. But the TA is not giving them any opportunity to do that. So something has to give here. Meredith Depot, as you can see in that picture there, how many people waiting for a bus? That's the operator's swing room where they wait if there's no bus. Nobody. There's the depot with 3 buses in the back. Those are spare buses that they always keep. Every bus goes out in Meredith Depot. So what do? Let's close the depot that works 100%. And that's what they're doing. So for those of you that may not know, Vito Fossella was the one that actually got us Charleston Depot. For those of you that have been here for a while, you know that. I was part of that. And if it wasn't for him, I could tell you right now, Charleston would never have opened. So I'm hoping, and I know it's kind of big shoes to fill again, but I'm hoping he could get that saved along with the rest of the elected officials. So again, thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, Danny. I think we're all here for one reason. We're here to help the Staten Island commuter. And we take it, may sound corny, but it really impacts the quality of their life with their family and the randomness and the uncertainty. So we're here for them. So Danny and us and all the folks behind, we're there for one. And a woman who actually chronicles this on almost a daily, if not a daily basis, is going to offer a different perspective from the eyes and ears of the commuter. Flippy?
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Borough President and Danny for inviting me today to speak on behalf of about 20,000 Staten Island Express Bus commuters. I want to start by saying that our lack of adequate express bus service is beyond disgraceful and unacceptable, especially for how much we pay to get back and forth from work. We experience daily delays and gaps in service of up to 1 hour on some routes, and that's because there are no buses going out, they're out of service, and trips that are outright canceled. Not only have we experienced gaps in service, but buses are bypassing us because they're full. Buses are being sent out daily with no air conditioning. They're breaking down en route. They're blowing tires. They have no destination signs. They have doors that won't open and close properly. The seats are deteriorating or they're not bolted down safely. It's even raining inside of a lot of these buses. I had a bus last week that had no wiper fluid, and my bus driver kept getting out every few stops with his own spray water bottle to spray his windshields to clean it several times. How's that safe for the driver, let alone the passengers on that bus? But yesterday morning, as Borough President Fossella mentioned, was the worst, where there was a bus operator ready to start his route, and his bus was crawling with roaches. That is disgusting, completely unacceptable. Why are the buses not being cleaned or maintained properly? Why are we, along with the bus operators, being forced to sit on buses that are disgusting, filthy, and unacceptable, and most importantly, unsafe conditions? And to add insult to injury, they now want to close one of the depots on the island. How does that improve the service for us? How does that make our commutes better? The MTA promised us not only improved service with the redesign, but that they would also make us spend less time commuting, not more and more with every cut that they continue to make. When will the MTA prioritize service for the high-paying commuters of Staten Island? We've always been known as the transportation desert. The MTA seems to be doing everything in their power now to continue to take services away from us when the most important and much needed mode of public transportation we have for tens of thousands of us. MTA, you must do better. We deserve more and better bus service, not less and worse. Thank you.
That's Filippa Grassafi, right? Filippa
Grassafi.
Did I miss anybody? Okay, any questions? Yes, sir.
Mike Madden from the Advance. I'm just wondering, with the amount of buses that are currently sitting inoperable, are you concerned about the system's ability to handle the smoke people as schools are picking up and schools go back to the offices? Anyone?
I'll just respond to anybody else, but no, that's sort of why we're here, right? As we're saying, it's bad now. It's been getting worse, and it's only going to get worse because more people, now summer's over, and people will be going back to work more frequently. There's a trend of more people going back to work anyway in a post-COVID world. And now these kids, as Danny could articulate better than I, there are a lot of school children who rely upon these buses. So all that, I'll use the phrase perfect storm, but it almost feels like a perfect storm that's occurring. And that's why we're here standing united with one voice to say to the MTA, we need your help. That's your job. Come and help. Not us, the people who rely upon the service. Danny, you want to say it? Is there anybody else?
Like I said before, this is not going to get fixed because we did a press conference. They have to put money into the system, fix the buses. The mechanics are willing to work, but unless they open up their pocketbook, it's not going to happen. And you're going to see a lot worse going forward.
Anybody else?
Have evidence that they had shifts, overtime, maintenance. I know that there was unnecessary overtime in a memo that went out in April, but do you guys actually have the evidence that that's been put in place in the it was on a case-by-case basis, but it hasn't been blanket, basically?
It's blanket, and I could show you their paycheck.
Danny, want to go?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it absolutely has been cut, and it's going to continue to be cut, and that is why I'm saying, and that's why we're doing this press conference, because I've been telling them for the longest. My maintenance chairman is over here, Nick Rivera, and he's been telling them since last year about the air conditioning. You're not going to have air conditioning for this summer that just passed. Deaf ears. So the problem is not getting better. It can't get better. They're beyond that. They have to put some money into the program and fix the buses. That's the only way the commuter is going to get back home, because there's just not enough buses for the operators. You could see behind me, they're there. You'll come back at 1 o'clock or 1:30, 2 o'clock. You'll see them all waiting to go to a school that they're not going to get to. It's
The MTA says they're not
no.
going to send out a bus with air conditioning.
Well, that's false. But it's not just air conditioning. No, it's not just air conditioning.
Some of them are more mechanical, and just buses can't really go.
Yep.
And frankly, they just ask, just take a random sample of commuters from Manhattan and last month if there were any buses without air conditioning that they had to get on. The answer would be, yeah, there were a lot of buses without air conditioning. Anybody else?
Do you guys know about a specific cases of workers that in danger because of this problem? Like a specific cases that you can tell?
Specific case of commuters or workers here?
No, I'm not going to say dangerous, but just who wants to sit in a bus with no air conditioning? The express buses have no windows that open, so for the driver to drive like that, sweat dripping down his face, and the commuters, it's ridiculous. Like Philippa said before, a bus driver having to get out with a spray bottle. Who does that? I mean, if you have something wrong with your car, you get it fixed.
Can you tell us more about this case, about these insects inside of the bus?
It's a lot worse than anyone could imagine. That's all I'm going to say.
I don't know if you can give us more details.
I could give you bus numbers. It would take me probably a month, but I have every bus. Every time I get a roach, I give it to Nick, he's the maintenance chairman. He logs it, gives it to the transit, and before all of this happened here, where they cut all of this, they would make sure that bus didn't go out. They would spray it the next day. They stopped that. Now this morning, one of my executive board guys showed me a bus that they said had roaches on it yesterday. That went out today. So if I don't have a union guy down there watching everything, they'll send it out.
I just wanted to add something to that. I can get you the information from my office, but about a month ago, I had constituents on a bus, including my sister. They were taking the express bus from Midtown Manhattan to Staten Island. There was an accident on the BQE coming home, on the Gowanus rather, not on the BQE, coming home, and they got stuck in the tunnel in massive traffic with no air conditioning. One of the passengers almost passed out. The bus driver had to actually take the top off of the bus to get air into the bus, to get air circulating, because that's how bad it was. I will get you that information right after this.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I want to thank Nick over here. He's been very, very helpful for, again, allowing us to understand it. All we here is trying to be as transparent, as truthful as possible. That's all we want.
When do they say they're going to close Meredith?
By the end of the year? By the end of December of 2024. Yes.
And I'm guessing before you did this press conference, you have had, meetings with the MTA before?
We have, I think it's fair to say that we have raised our voice with the MTA for years. We've expressed, not to go down memory lane, but 30 years ago, there were no express bus services south of Richmond Avenue, and it was the fastest growing area in the state of New York. So we're constantly seeming like we're behind the 8 ball with the MTA. They know our concerns, but what we're doing here today, to go full circle, is now half the bus fleet on a daily basis is inoperable, which means that you design a fleet to accommodate the 20,000 passengers, and then you say we're going to take half of them out of service every day, how are you going to deliver the same level of service with the half the amount of buses? And we've tried to get their attention, we've tried to indicate that this is a problem, and we're forced to do things like this.
In response to some of the advances reporting on the Meredith Depot, the MTA said that they feel that the depot is no longer necessary due to right sizing of capacity at Yukon, Hamilton, and Charleston. Since you guys are saying that the space is more dire than the MTA seems to think, can you give us a little more specifics about how tight some of the depots are in terms of?
So I'm just going to say a few things, and I'm going to turn it over to Danny or anybody else. But we talked about the Charleston Bus Depot. We were told years ago the Charleston Bus Depot wasn't necessary, right? And we were told that repeatedly. Then they actually went ahead and put a sign on Arthur Kill Road that said future home of the Charleston Bus Depot right by the LNG tanks, which was a total lie. They never had any intentions of putting it there, which is why I ended up ultimately at Arthur Kill Road. So unfortunately, we have to take a lot of their statements with a grain of salt. But let's just look at it from a common sense point of view. If the 3 other bus depots are at or almost at capacity, if the electrification that's coming down the line is going to take more space away, and you're going to take the 75 or so buses at Meredith and put them somewhere, where are they going to go? And by the way, as we said, it's the most efficient, not to take away from the other 3 are big depots, it's the most efficient. And it accommodates a lot of people on the North Shore. Danny?
And besides the space in the depots, any one of you that want to come back here later on at night, when the buses are lined up, as you can see them over there now, they go down to Forest Hill Road to Richmond Avenue, backed up to get fueled, add another 40 buses to this depot, and see what happens then. And it's a big concern for the people that live over there. And the buses are idling because they're not going to shut it off every 15 or 20 seconds when they move up. And like Vito said too, they're bringing the electric buses to here in Charleston. They need room for those batteries. Their chargers, they're huge, takes up a lot of space. So when they tell you that there's enough room, yeah, there's enough room. You park them in the street, park them over here, you park them down the alley over there. There's no room. They'll tell you there's room. There is no room.
Nice. Anybody else? Yeah.
You were talking about the shortage.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you were talking about that, like there's a shortage in the employees.
Yeah.
I would like to know, like, the numbers. How many people do we need to actually have the system on track? And why is there a shortage? And since that
I don't think we mentioned there's a shortage of employees here. I think what they're saying is they need more funding to do the necessary fixing of the buses. And they made a pretty public statement that as of now they don't want to do it. So once again, common sense, it defies common sense to say if the bus, as somebody said, Danny said, if your car is broke, you go fix it. If a bus is broke, their excuses or their response is just leave it be.
How the budget for transport has
I'm sorry?
how the budget for transport has been changed in the last year?
How the bus has been?
The budget?
Oh, the budget. Well, they got a lot of money, right? And they have a lot of money, but I go back and it almost seems comical that they just gloss over and we lose $700 million a year, as Mike Tanusa said. We all know people just don't pay the subway fare. Right? So if we could just take, and we don't even want to be pigs, just give us like 2% of that. Give us 3% of that. And we will address, I believe, don't quote me on this one, but I believe if we get 2%, we'll probably solve the entire budget, the bus issue on Staten Island.